Hello, my name is Tolk and I exist, therefore I think too much. So, the last video I posted, was either reading Nietzsche or it was reading Marguerite Porret, but the last video I made about Marguerite Porret mentioned a situation that happened in my life, and I realized that I am so small of a person as far as this platform is concerned and where my influence is, but I do also understand that this is all public facing, and that I do have, family and extended family that watch these from time to time. So there are several points I intend to make in this rant vaguely addressing that matter. Here's hoping I actually make those points. Essentially, one, I have noticed in the holidays happening, and, prior mentioning holiday mourning and that I participate in it. Holiday mourning being when the end of the year comes around, you start taking note of everything you have or all that you are, and mourning, reaching out to loved ones or attempting to find more loved ones, or just taking account of your life, going through a yearly midlife crisis. And another thing that, having said that, comes up is my adapting to needing a filter. I survived living through the religious part of my life by not having a filter. I didn't know certain technology existed because I wasn't raised with the appreciation of it. So I was told, we know where you are at all times because God tells us directly everything that you're doing. I didn't know that you could track someone's phone. So I just told everyone everything because essentially I, was going to be told on anyways by an all-seeing God. And then, after 19, my mom and I disagree on what actually happened, but I wasn't living at home anymore. And I had been that level of sheltered where I didn't know certain technologies existed. What I knew was how to make a resume, how to apply to a job, how to get a bank account, and how to pay bills. And I didn't have much appreciation for social standing or how to exist where society is concerned. What to look out for, how to protect yourself, any of that, really. I eventually fell into what I went through and fell through it. And through falling continuously, I eventually landed on an understanding of how not to exist. So that's where I'm working from now, is how do I exist? And having said that, the reason I am vague is manyfold. So I guess the reasons, one of which is you learn to choose your moment. People say choose your fight. You don't go around saying everything all the time because everything comes with a price. So if I start relaying, there's this song called Secrets by Grandson. I think it's Secrets. Essentially just going over that the whole family and that each of them has a trait. There's an elephant in the room type of thing. And you have to take into consideration the aftermath of what it is that you are causing by talking. And so it's just choose what you want to deal with in the end. So that's one reason to be vague about things. And that makes it sound so much worse than it is. It's not. I'm fine. Everything is fine. I'm safe and all is well. And I'm not saying that as a, blink twice if they're in the room with you. I'm currently home alone. I maybe shouldn't say that. I don't know. This isn't recorded live. It's fine. So the other reason to be vague is in case the other party, grows out of what they did. I don't want that following them because they are a loved one. Everybody makes choices. Some choices suck ass, and that was a really bad choice they made. But I would like them to get over it, and I would like them to grow the fuck up. So I don't want to project this into a public-facing situation to make them pay for something that has already happened, 7 years ago now. And for the other party, didn't last as long as it lasted for me. I don't know what's going on with them. So not trying to hold them to it. And then something else that is more relative to the public. And I'm going to be speaking generally, so there are exceptions to every rule. A trend I have noticed in humanity is that if you did not grow up with something, and just to make it very simple, I'm going to take the metaphor of plastic surgery. If you did not grow up with a feature and adapted due to that feature, you then find it more normal to showcase that feature because you were not treated for years as though you had that. So like women who get reconstructive surgery end up showcasing it to benefit off of it, where other women who were born that way have learned to make amends because certain situations didn't treat them the way they did. So, clothing wise, holding yourself, however it is, there is a freedom of getting it later in life rather than growing up with it. Likewise, abuse. How the abuse visits you, when the abuse visits you, you adapt differently. So, in my own life, I have noticed it's happened twice to me, just in personal relationships. When I was very forthright with who I am, how I deal with things, what I went through, there was one person I came across who just straight up said what I went through as though they themselves went through it, like identity theft. It's really uncomfortable when you're sitting right there watching them relay everything as though it's theirs. Another person, I did something, and they now to this day tell people they did it, even in spite of it happening in front of a room full of people. And it is like hypochondria, where people online hear something happened, to someone abuse-wise, and they think I can now benefit. This is a new story I can benefit off of. But they didn't go through the situation, so they never adapted for the situation. They just know how to play it to benefit from it. And this is why in one of the videos I made, I said that, I think people should be treated for the person that they are, rather than for the experiences they went through. And where it concerns me specifically, I'm an absolute open book. I'm fine with saying everything I went through, anything I did. Ask me a question, and I will be as limited a filter as the other party can allow, based on their comforts. And so I've had to learn, to ask back when someone asks me a question, to ask them back, what are you comfortable with? Because I want to be treated for the person that I am, not for what I went through. Sure, I went through it, and sure, the decisions I made created who I am. But if you meet me on Monday, at a coffee shop, and you think this is the person that I understand they are, I'm still that person, even when you find out I did something. And that sounds so much sketchier than it is. But I mean it on the other side of it. Like, I don't think that clout, that reputation, should be built off of what people went through. I think clout and reputation, honor and respect should be built off of how the person made themselves. So when I begged for clarification based on what I read of Marguerite Porete, it was because I had become infuriatingly frustrated with my confusion, which is where I was when the situation happened, and why I decided to teach myself to conceive what I was reading again by forcing myself to read, which, is actually how I learned to read at my grade level in the first place. ADHD side tangent, that's mildly relevant. When I was in 7th grade, 8th grade, I was 4 years behind my reading level. And it was a weird, precarious situation at home of middle of the move, just adaptation to certain situations that had happened. So I understood, when the teacher reports that I'm doing something bad, that it's on me, to adapt to what needs to change. And if enough reports are made, there's no way around it. So when that was said, I decided to just go to the library and check out a book that was supposed to be my reading level. And I think it was actually 2 reading levels above where I was supposed to be. And it was essentially just check out the thickest, most absurd book I could get my hands on. And I just continued to recheck it out. And I knew I wouldn't understand it when I was reading it, but the intention was to continuously read it over and over and over and over again until I finally got to a point where I could vaguely comprehend it. So that is why, to this day, one of my favorite books is Great Expectations. I actually don't necessarily like the book. I think it's a genius plot point. But it isn't. The storyline is rough. It's rough. It's not my favorite fiction. My favorite is Wuthering Heights, which is another rough one. But anyways, that's how I learned to teach myself, was by continuously repeating doing something I can't do at the time until I can get to the point of doing it. So, reading books, and these videos I make about reading books, essentially I was reading philosophy to teach myself how to be again, how to exist in a more down-to-earth sort of way, in a more realistic sort of way. And I would read them and start ranting like I do on these videos. And my significant other was like, well, why don't you just monetize this? I like what you have to say. Maybe other people would like what it is you have to say as well. And so I figured I would do that on these videos. Marguerite put it, however, like I said, I do think that she suffers her own mental health disorder, and it's not so much a religious text or a philosophical text as it is a psychotic break. And as I've said again, I'm saying as I've said too many times, but it could be projection. I'm not, a learned or educated individual. I have some college, but no degree. And I did genuinely just get frustrated. And so begging was because I was frustrated. The story I said in the last video I made, to circle back around, I'm safe, I'm fine, I'm okay. The reason I am vague is that person's no longer in my life, but in case they grow the fuck up, I want them to be able to grow the fuck up. And another part of that is, the closer the person is to you, the closer they are to other people, there is, for every action, there's a reaction. So even if I'm not the one paying the price for what it is that I say, it could be that it visits itself poorly on all of their loved ones. And I love them too. So, I'm not looking to be that upsetting. And it's choose your battle, because is it so important to me that I'm willing to upset more than just myself? By, talking about it all the damn time. No, it's not. And something else therein that, moving on, I feel I ought to address is, because I'm sure it will be said as, I think, initially the reason I made one of the holiday morning videos that I did make was a sentiment of, why don't you just go see a therapist? And it's a sentiment that is reasonably held. Perfect thing to say to someone, I think. I mean, I'm not insulted by it, but another side to that I feel like more people should take into consideration is that it isn't a fix-all. If you do go see a therapist and, hopefully work alongside a psychologist, if you do, like me, have issues that certain chemicals being introduced into your system could fix, you need the pairing of a therapist who works alongside that psychologist. One or the other may not actually help. But even in seeing both of these individuals or just a therapist alone, I don't advise that you see a psychologist alone. If you're seeing a psychologist, I believe it really ought to be paired with a therapist. But if you are going to see either a therapist and psychologist or just a therapist, that still puts you in a position of needing to do work on your own as well. It isn't just in the hands of your therapist to do the work for you. Having said that, there is also the need to quote-unquote shop around to find what is so conveniently put as right fit for your person. But what is less convenient to talk about is that I don't give a shit what fucking position you have in life. If you are a doctor, if you're a brain surgeon, if you're a therapist, if you're a lawyer, being a professional, and I don't care what the fuck Trump's presidency is dictated, that's a profession. You're getting paid. You went to college. It's a profession. Being a professional does not automatically forgive you of your person. You're still an individual with your own subjective reality. So going to see a therapist, you need to take into consideration their subjective reality, where they're coming from, if it's a religious-based practice, if that religion is something that you also practice, or if you don't. Their, medical degrees, sure. Their level of education, absolutely. But in a very sick country, like the US, it is impossible to walk away being mentally well. Every single person here, and I will swear by this, on my blood, whatever, every single person here is on a spectrum of mental illness. How well you cover that, how well you deal with that is on an individual basis. You are either woefully ignorant and therein capable of being innocent, and your naivety forces other people to pay for you, the price of living for you, or you are mentally ill. There's an exception to every rule. So when I say shop around for a therapist, that is needing to be taken into consideration. Their education, as well as where they're coming from. Now, where it concerns my person as an individual, admittedly, there is only so much work that I can do, given that I do lack education, so I can understand if I take tests based on the retired DSM, which is what I do just to check if I got healthier or got worse. My bug. I still have to appreciate and understand that I do not know the terminology, which does, conveniently for their profession, change. Certain terminology is retired, and they say it's due to scientific understanding of development and how these things visit. But sometimes I think certain changes are not only unnecessary, but convolute an issue, like, for instance, how multiple personality disorder changed to dissociative disorder, dissociative identity disorder, where technically speaking, a dissociative identity disorder can lead to a multiple personality disorder, and they are not one and the same, where the current terminology would lead one to believe that they are one and the same. And I think that is where one would need a therapist, one would need someone with education to be able to work their way through all of this terminology. So I can test myself on a retired DSM to vaguely understand, but I will not be able to understand the umbrella terminology, or if all of these things are side effects to one thing, and that it would be better therein to solve this one thing versus go after all of these things. So I can appreciate the role of a therapist in someone's life. And where, it could fit in my life as well. Having said that, there is a subjectivity to my existence. And part of that is that my mother is a therapist. And it is currently more reasonable for me to not have things recorded on paper. While, working through any past traumas would be helpful, I can do a good amount on my own. I just need time. And I don't want certain things to be forced on me, given the need to shop for therapists and their understanding of whatever situation would arise. Like finding out, because I demanded the medical notes of the last doctor I saw, that it was medically written into my notes that I have ADHD, and no one advised me. So there are things I know would be put on paper that could legally work against me, and that those things put into writing, put into public facing whatever, may not be exactly as it is. It could very well just be subjective to the individual aiming to help me. And because of my mother's profession, it could put me in a bind, it could put others in a bind. If this subjective individual being introduced into the situation is not capable of appreciating that much. So, I say all of this because the attempt was to make others less worried about me, and I don't know how well I'm doing at that. The last thing I think that was supposed to be the last thing, but I don't know if I've addressed this yet or not, and I don't know how long this video is getting, so if you have, it says it on the screen, it's about 30 minutes. If you've stayed this long, I'm sorry for you watching this much, but, oh crap, I lost what the last thing was. Oh, I remember. Okay, so in the holiday morning thing, I have realized that while I am an open book, again, I do have to ask other people what they're comfortable with, because I've addressed this in one video, you get used to the abuse, you end up around people who likewise are used to the abuse, and if you step outside of that, then other people treat you for the abuse you've gone through. But when you step back inside of that, everybody's treating you for the individual you are. And so it forces you to continue to participate in a society that would give you exactly what you don't want. So in drug culture, if you participate with people who have been abused, who are abusing substances, then everything is normal. You're normal, and you're respected for the individual you are, presumably, generally. But you step outside of that, and those experiences don't translate. And so I've seen the other side, where people start bragging about what they've done, And quote unquote normal society is taught to respect chemical abuse as though it is well earned. And I don't want to be treated like that. I want to be treated for the individual I am. I have learned that I've been chemically abused longer than I had understood. I chose to chemically abuse myself for 2 years out of the 32 years that I have been alive. So my experience of knowing that I'm participating in something is restricted to those 2 years. My experience of being influenced is longer than that. And prior to all of that, I was raised to be... Raised is a funny word. I was made to understand that how I appear protects other people. And that is manners, mannerisms are how other people would network through me and network because of me. So if I did not appear correctly, I could hurt someone else's networking opportunities. And so in that, I have adapted to living front-facing, just how I appear, as well as I have learned to adapt to make up for how I appear. Because people will look at me and say, you don't know what I've been through. So I then had to learn how to present myself so that I am not discounted where other people have been abused. And afterwards, I now need to figure out who is what. It's very difficult for me to understand. I've been called the current, maybe not current, but when I was homeless, I was literally sleeping on the dirt of the park, and the kids around were calling me a princess and saying I was very spoiled and I had lived life so well because of how I look. And it took me years later to find out that while I was homeless there, people thought that I wasn't because of how I appear and how I present. So I have learned that I need to demand that my abuse be understood for what it is. And now, when it is the other side of society, I don't realize, I can logically understand people don't generally do things, but I still don't perceive how other people feel about it. And so I think, if it's a one-on-one situation, I think it'll be fine to just say what I went through because they're dealing with me as I am and they like me as I am. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm obviously not in an unsafe situation. You're obviously going to be safe around me, or at least I think it's obvious. So talking is just talking. And maybe I don't understand or I don't realize, I'm not sure which it is. But it's hard for me to predict the other person's reaction to what it is I went through. And so I'll throw things out oh yeah, I've done a lot of this. And it's upsetting to find out how upsetting I am. Especially, I reference if you go see a therapist, that's work that you still have to do on your own. I am doing work on my own. And so these abusive situations that I went through, it's not something that emotionally visits itself on me. Some of them chemically still visit themselves on me, but I'm not bent out of shape because of things happening to me in the past. I have been, but I'd like to think I got to a point where I feel safe enough that it's not as bothersome. It's not stunting my growth as much anymore. And I feel like if I talk about it, people hear what I went through and perceive it as though I'm still going through it. And that's very difficult for me because, again, I'd like to be known for who I am. Even if you know what I went through, I'd like you to know what I went through, but I'd still like to be who I am first and foremost. And so, again, you see online a lot of the time people become their past more than they are who they are now. And I've seen it again in my personal life where someone used my past as though it was theirs to get what they wanted out of life. And I've learned that because I've had the negative aspect of that, I've learned not to be that upsetting. I don't want to be treated with pity. I don't want to be pathetic. I just want it to be a fact, like I wore a blue shirt yesterday. I did that, but now I am reading books and I make blueprints and I'm learning hobbies, and that's what I want. Is I want to learn more of my music taste and more of my hobbies. And I want to be granted that ground, but that doesn't mean that I want anybody to deny me my ground. I don't want to make people uncomfortable. So, all of this to say, my being vague at the end of the video isn't me trying to convey that I'm not okay. It isn't me trying to convey that I need to be fought for or I need to be pitied. I'm just trying not to be upsetting, I guess. So. Oh, and I'm also trying not to influence people poorly. Because I also don't think that what I went through was normal, and I don't feel like it'd be safe for anybody to get that information and then normalize it themselves. Just like people finding out about DID, I guess, and then you can, push yourself into a psychotic break if you try fucking hard enough. So I feel like, talking about these things is precarious. You want to inform people that things exist, but you don't want to inform them to the extent of making them upset or putting them in danger. I want to be known, but I don't want to, just to say it for the 5th time, be upsetting. And so this YouTube channel endeavor thing is going to be very difficult for me because I, like I said, I've adapted to being front facing so someone else can network off of me, and I've also adapted to demanding that I be known for everything I went through. So now I need to toe the line of what's going to be too much, which I guess I need to do anyways, because I in all of these holiday things that are happening in this month, I'm realizing, okay, I can't say that. That's not normal to say. So yep, I'm fine. As much as anyone can believe that. I hope you do. Thank you for watching, and I will get back to reading Marguerite Porete and Beyond Good and Evil soon. Presumably got 2 days that I'm just going to play What the hell is it called? I'm gonna be playing some game with my significant other. We have planned that for his 2 days off. I want to call it something Mordor. I'm not the person that introduced this game. I don't know, it's an RPG. I'll get over it. It's now just gonna bug the shit out of me. So I'll do it after those 2 days. Goodbye. And I hope you have a good night and sleep well and eat well and take care of yourselves. And I guess, TLDR, if you fast forwarded all throughout it, I don't know why you would. But treat people for who they are. Do not respect people for what they went through. Respect them for what they became. Goodbye.